Welcome back to Rafah in southern Gaza. We are so close to the Egyptian border that in the last 20 minutes we've heard the Egyptian Air Force dropping bombs on ISIS in the Sinai. We've travelled here from Gaza City and found in doing so that the damage of war, both physical and psychological, extends right through this tiny besieged enclave. We have reported the more than 2,000 who died, but for the living, the psychological damage is particularly acute amongst the tens of thousands of children here. Last year, 3,446 children were injured. We visited hospitals during the height of the bombardment and faced scores of casualties. And this is 7-year-old Noureddin, grievously injured in an F-16 missile attack in which 45 others were injured. Her mother says many were children. 2 were killed. Last week, Save the Children reported that in the worst-hit areas, on average, 7 out of 10 children suffer regular nightmares here in Gaza. 75% of children are regularly bedwetting, and more than 70% worry about another war. We stopped at one encampment on the way here from Gaza City that perhaps speaks for what is happening throughout the Gaza Strip. A series of houses all belonging loosely to one family, now mere stacks of rubble littered with tangled reinforcement rods. Some have refused to move, trying instead to render their old home habitable. The mother of the household has to wash dishes using the tap in the emergency water barrel, having once enjoyed a sink with hot and cold taps and a draining board. Of the 8 children, 3 were born blind. 1 still sleeps bundled on a mattress near the makeshift wall of what is now home. They only have one Braille book, the Quran. When food is a struggle to find, Braille materials are impossible. 14-year-old Mohammed, small for his age, found and held on to my hand. A family challenged in blindness and now struggling to sustain a home. Across the road, the international community has provided sweltering metal containers for the surviving displaced families to live. In the summer, the daytime temperatures inside reach 60 degrees Celsius. This one belongs to Mohammed's family. His sighted sister lost the sight in her left eye during the bomb run that smashed her home.
I went to Egypt and the doctors told me there was nothing that could be done.
Here then is a Norwegian charity deploying psychological and physical therapy to try to bring the children through. There is a real question as to whether they will ever again live in a conventional house. We're in a tent where play, music and drama are used to try to rebuild the children's sense of security. Their miraculous clean clothes and smiling faces hide a dark invasion of their short lives.
My uncle was killed in the war. A plane attacked his house with a rocket and the house collapsed on top of him.
I have nightmares there will be another war. Last year my parents argued over and over about whether we should evacuate.
We don't want anything from anyone. All we want is our homes back.
If to some extent these girls are the lucky ones, luckier still is this girl, Nema Abuful, whom I met in the Shiva hospital at the height of the war a year ago. Her horribly bruised panda eyes were impossible to forget. Today we found her again, now safely in her father's arms, her eyes recovered. But now she twitches a little and wets the bed at night. She's somehow impressed with the photos her father kept of her. At just 4 years old, Nema is a symbol of resilience and recovery. But how many others will be so lucky? The wreckage behind me in Rafah at the southern end of Gaza, close to that Egyptian border I described earlier, was much bombarded in the course of the war a year ago. In this area, on August the 1st, in one day, 138 people were killed in an assault by the Israeli army, which the Israelis themselves are now investigating for possible criminal charges. Well, last night, Hamas's armed wing paraded for the first time since the war in a show of strength. But it said something too of Hamas's standing today in Gaza. In the vanguard of the parade was a truckload of Hessian-draped homemade rockets. The overture to the event was the over-modulated voice of a cheerleader speaking of the brigade's heroism. But this was not an event that brought Gaza to a standstill.
A kind of marching in step, but it's not a terribly impressive sight. And the number of people out on the streets to see them is, well, out of a population of 1.5 million, maybe a few thousand.
The average age of civilians present was perhaps 20. It's hard to gauge the popularity of Hamas. Few were prepared to risk criticizing them. They were elected nearly a decade ago and face criticism for never risking a poll since. But as the numbers around the square indicated, widespread support for Hamas in the aftermath of the war is hard to find.
Well, we're joined now by one of the key figures in the upper echelons of Hamas, Dr. Fawzi Hamad. Dr. Hamad, looking back at the war 1 year on, one's bound to ask, what is the point of throwing rockets into Israel when you know that they have this iron shield which effectively deals with them, when you know also that in response Israel is bound to attack you and the civilians within Gaza?
I can say first of all that we did not start this aggression. Israel started this aggression against us as Palestinians, and they started to target civilians, target homes, hospitals, mosques, everywhere, all the time.
Well, your rockets came first.
Yeah, no, this is not true. This is not true. People, they started first of all to attack our people, even in the West Bank. They arrested more than 500 people from Hamas in Hebron and different Palestinian cities in the West Bank. And after that, they tried to punish Hamas. We tried to sympathize with our brothers in the West Bank because it's one home, one place, and we should protect ourselves. But Israel also started to target us with a tremendous and terrible way and killing people, killing civilians.
But surely this just really points to the fact that it isn't simply worth taking them on militarily. Surely the point now has come that you are so weak in the face of their strength that the best thing would be to talk.
Yeah, I think Israel did not give us a chance to talk or to have a compromise for this. They started to kill. In the first day, they started to kill hundreds of people, tens of people in the West Bank, everywhere from Gaza until Beit Hanun. So you find a very wide war against us, and many people, every moment, they were killed at that time. So there was no choice not to keep silent at that time.
You're very critical of the Israelis for human rights violations, particularly against your own civilians. But it doesn't ring well when you hear that you have summarily executed people you regard as informers without trial. Surely you could have tried them and then dealt with them.
We declare, frankly, that execution was wrong. It's not true. And this is against law. This is against our ethics.
So it should not have happened.
But I think this happened by Israel because these informers, these collaborators, try to help the Israelis in order to crash homes and to destroy homes, to kill people.
But have the people who summarily executed, have they been punished? Have they been punished?
This is not justified. This is not justified.
But were they punished? The people who executed these people?
The families, they try to punish these collaborators because of their guilty, because of their collaboration with Israel Assad. But we said, frankly, in many statements that this is not wrong.
You see, a lot of people said that this stuff was settling scores, and there were resentments and grudges which were dealt with in this summarily way.
Look, we said that in this way we try to protect our people, to protect our civilians. But I said that collaborators try to guide the Israelis everywhere, to go everywhere, to kill people, to kill fighters, to destroy, even to put weapons in the schools, to put weapons in different places in order to give justification and excuse to Israel in order to kill people and to destroy homes. So I think, as I said, this was not justified, but this is kind of upset, frustration from people against the collaborators.
Why isn't it worth risking peace? Why is it worth trying? Just saying, we recognize Israel. That would steal their thunder. They wouldn't know what to do about it if Hamas recognized Israel.
Well, I can recognize Israel which occupy my territories, who kill my people, who destroy my homes.
But do you accept Israel's right to exist?
Why do I accept Israel now? They don't accept my existence since 60 years. I have a lot of dreams here. I spent as Gaza. I spent all of my life as a refugee. They don't recognize my right in retain in Palestinian state, even in living in dignity and respect. They try to destroy everything for the Palestinians.
Right.
I don't know why the world pressure Hamas and the Palestinian faction to recognize Israel, and they don't pressure Israel to recognize the Palestinian rights.
But you do at the moment have some conversation going on with Israel about two citizens
Have you got them?
No, this is not true. We have no talks with Israel about this point.
Do you have two citizens of theirs?
Look, I think we have...
They say you have and that you're going to...
They said so, but I think they understand that someone who left Gaza Strip, and there is still one here in Gaza, and maybe, I don't know if there's talks or no, but I'm not sure about this point.
Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us, Dr. Hamad.
Thank you.
And I'm grateful to you for turning up. We have, of course, been reporting this anniversary from Gaza, but Israel suffered loss too. The Israeli army had 67 soldiers killed and 6 civilians died when Hamas rockets got through Israel's Iron Dome defences. We're joined from Tel Aviv by Israeli Prime Minister, the Israeli Prime Minister spokesman Mark Regev. Mark Regev, can I talk to you about the rebuilding of this terribly besieged enclave? Isn't it a fact that the continuing siege of Gaza is preventing the rebuilding of the damage that you inflicted?
I don't accept both parts of your question, John. The war is not something that Israel wanted last year. We did everything to try to avoid the conflict. Hamas, unfortunately, both initiated the war and prolonged it by rejecting ceasefire proposals that Israel itself accepted. The Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, gave an interview just 3 weeks ago to an Egyptian paper, and he clearly pointed the finger at Hamas for provoking the war, for continuing the war, for rejecting the ceasefires. He himself said that Hamas was callous with Palestinian lives. As to the blockade of Gaza, if you go to the crossings, you see trucks going in every day with humanitarian support, with construction material. After the end of the conflict, we signed an agreement with the UN and the PA to facilitate the reconstruction of Gaza, and we are a full partner in that effort.
Yes, but you know the way it is here, Mark Regev. The situation is that there are slightly damaged, very damaged and severely damaged houses. They have had supplies come in, but those that have been destroyed, you have refused so far, although there were some talks from you last week, you've refused to allow any materials in for the complete rebuilding of houses that were destroyed.
I can tell you, I have the numbers in front of me, more than 1,300,000 tons of construction material has gone into Gaza. We're willing to continue to do so and to do more. I think you're wrong if you're saying, well, Israel's the reason why this reconstruction hasn't happened as quickly as it should. In fact, both the UN and the Arab League have pointed the finger in a totally different direction.
Well, Mr. Regev, let's be quite clear about this. I've been to this strip many times, and I have to tell you that that siege feels absolute. It is extremely difficult to get cement, for example. There are also these dual lists in which you decide what might have a military application. And I discovered yesterday from a Norwegian diplomat that a plank of wood of a certain thickness is regarded as having a military application. This is nonsense. You are not bringing the material in here that is needed to reconstruct.
I strongly disagree. As I said, over 1,300,000 tons, and we're willing to do more. It's clear, unfortunately, that Hamas is siphoning off some of this building material for its own purposes. And once again, both the United Nations and the Arab League have pointed the finger in the other direction, not at Israel. They've said publicly that the reason for the hold-ups in the reconstruction that we want to see, it's in our interest to see Gaza in a better situation. The reason for the hold-ups is the internal Palestinian infighting. On the record, the Secretary General of the Arab League and the UN person in charge of the Middle East.
Well, now, Prime Minister Netanyahu must be in the autumn of his prime ministerial career. Would it not be worth going out in a blaze of glory, just doing something utterly unique, coming forward and saying, look, I'm fed up with war. I want to talk to these people. I'm going to do it personally. I'm going to offer myself forward as somebody who will negotiate in order to achieve peace. It's about as far from his mind as it could be, correct?
He said exactly those words last week when he said he's willing to restart peace talks with the Palestinians without any preconditions whatsoever. He said so publicly. That's our position. The trouble is the people who run Gaza, and you know this, and I heard the previous interview, they don't accept that Israel has a right to exist. They don't believe in peace. They unfortunately put violent jihad above and beyond the interests of the people of Gaza, who deserve better. I mean, ultimately, the people of Gaza suffer more than anyone else because of this terrible Hamas regime that makes everyone normal lives, Israelis and Palestinians. And Hamas is simply not allowing that to happen.
But Mark Regev, just briefly and finally, could we just check up on these two civilians that you have been talking about as missing in Gaza? Are you anywhere near getting hold of them or finding out what's happened to them?
We know they're both in Gaza. We know one of them specifically is in the hands of Hamas, and we're holding Hamas accountable.
Mark Regev in Jerusalem, thank you very much indeed for joining us. That's all from Gaza. Now back to Kathy in London.